I'm Marion Hale, 62 years old, and this was supposed to be an ordinary Thanksgiving dinner. The table was full, cranberry sauce bleeding into the mashed potatoes, the turkey steaming under its golden skin, my children tapping on their phones between polite laughs. I was carving the bird when my eldest, Clara, lifted her head and said, "Mom, please stop asking for money. It's embarrassing." The knife didn't slip, but something inside me did. The sound around the table thinned until I could hear only the ticking clock above the stove, counting down the seconds of my silence. I looked at her face. The same face I had stayed up nights for when she had the flu at 9 years old. The same lips I'd taught to read the word gratitude. And now, at 34, those lips had decided I was a beggar. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her that the only money I'd ever asked about was the balance on the credit card I'd paid off for her, 3 times this year alone. Instead, I wiped my hands on the dish towel, picked up my phone, and opened my banking app. My fingers moved without shaking. "Are you texting someone, Mom?" Ethan asked, half joking. "No," I said. "I'm closing accounts." One by one, I removed each of their names from my cards, their automatic payments, their shared limits, their safety nets I had built over the past 4 years since their father died. The notifications chimed almost rhythmically, like tiny doors locking. Authorized user removed, card access canceled. Clara's smile faltered. Joy looked confused. Ethan tried to laugh, but the sound died somewhere between surprise and guilt. I set the phone down on the table. "You don't have to worry about embarrassment anymore," I said. There's nothing left to ask for." The room felt smaller, the air thick with roasted butter and stunned silence. I poured myself a glass of water, took a sip, and looked at the 3 faces that used to be my whole world. That was the moment I stopped being the family's safety net. And though I didn't know it yet, that decision, made between the turkey and the ticking clock, would change everything that came after. The morning after Thanksgiving, the house smelled of roasted butter and cold regret. I woke early, before the frost on the windows melted, and brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. The quiet felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. On the table sat my old green leather notebook, the one I used back when I worked as a librarian, tracking overdue books and budgets. It had waited years for a new purpose. I sat down, pen in hand, and started writing. Not memories. Numbers. I listed each favor that had disguised itself as love. December, 4 years ago, $3,200 for Clara's frozen pipes. She'd called crying, said the landlord wouldn't fix it before Christmas. April, 3 years ago, $5,000 to help Joy move out of her ex's apartment. I told her no woman should start over empty-handed. Last spring, $8,000 in credit card payments for Clara. She promised to pay me back as soon as the promotion goes through. The promotion never came, but new handbags did. 2 summers ago, $7,400 on Ethan's truck loan, a temporary cosign that turned into monthly payments when his hours got cut. By the time I reached the last entry, my coffee had gone cold. The total sat at the bottom of the page, a number so round and calm it looked like it had been waiting to be found, $30,400. I traced it with my pen until the ink bled through. $30,000. Not in gifts, not in love, but in permission. Permission for my grown children to live without consequence. Outside. Snow started to fall again. I could see the mail truck crawling down the street like it had somewhere important to be. My phone buzzed on the table. Clara first. Then Ethan. Then Joy. Mom. My card just got declined. Did you close something? Please call me. This is serious. I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down and stared at the notebook. My handwriting looked foreign, like it belonged to someone braver than me. I read each line again, slower this time, remembering how easily just this once had become always. By noon, I'd folded the paper inside the front cover and set the notebook by the sink. The sunlight through the frosted window hit the green leather, making it shine like a small piece of truth. I realized then that I hadn't been keeping a record of generosity. I'd been keeping a record of avoidance. Every dollar a way to postpone a fight. Every payment an apology I never owed. The phone buzzed again. I finally picked it up and typed one message to all three. Dinner at my house tonight. 7 o'clock. We'll talk then. I hit send before doubt could stop me. The decision sat in my chest like a warm stone. Heavy, but right. I poured the cold coffee down the sink, washed the mug, and watched the brown water swirl away. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was the quiet relief of finally adding the numbers up and deciding to stop subtracting myself. At 7 sharp. Headlights cut across the driveway. I'd made soup, chicken, and rice. Simple and warm, but it felt more like evidence than dinner. The house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I set out 4 bowls, then sat and waited. Clara arrived first, wrapped in a long beige coat and the kind of perfume that tries too hard to sound expensive. "Mom, this is ridiculous," she said before taking her boots off. "Target froze my account because the card was declined. Can you please explain?" Ethan followed, shaking snow from his jacket. "Yeah, what's going on? I was at the gas station. The card wouldn't swipe. They thought it was stolen." Joy came last, a baby blanket draped over her shoulder, eyes puffy from crying. "Mom, I couldn't buy Liam's medicine. You didn't even warn us." I gestured to the table. "Sit down." Clara crossed her arms. "I don't understand why you'd humiliate us like this." "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said quietly. "I just stopped paying your bills," Ethan scoffed. "That's cold, Mom." "Cold is what it feels like," I said, "when you stand at a gas pump in January because your son forgot to pay his part again." He looked away. Joy started to cry softly. "I wasn't trying to take advantage of you, Mom. I'm not making much right now." "I know," I said, "and I love you. But love doesn't mean pretending everything's fine while I drain my retirement." I pulled the green notebook from the counter and placed it in front of them. The pages fell open naturally, as if the numbers themselves wanted to be seen. "This is what I've covered since your father passed," I said. "Pipes, loans, credit cards, deposits, $30,400. That's not counting groceries, gas, or babysitting. Just the debts." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Clara flipped through the pages, her face tightening. "You kept track? Like some sort of accountant?" "Like someone who didn't want to forget," I said. She slammed the notebook shut. "This is unbelievable. You make it sound like we're criminals." "No," I said. "Criminals know when they've crossed a line." For a moment, I thought she might leave. Her hand even reached for her purse. But something stopped her. Maybe the look on Joy's face. Maybe the weight of the snow pressing against the windows. Ethan cleared his throat. "So what now? You want us to pay you back? With what? You know I'm still catching up." "I don't want promises," I said. "I want a plan. And for that, we'll have help. I've set an appointment with a lawyer, Renee Alvarez, on Monday. She'll help us make it official." Clara's eyes widened. "A lawyer? Are you serious? You're taking your own children to court?" I shook my head. "No, Clara. I'm taking us to a table where we can stop shouting and start writing things down. If it has to be legal to be respected, then so be it." Joy wiped her face with the baby blanket. "I'll come," she said softly, "if it keeps us from hurting each other more." Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I'll come too. Clara didn't answer. She just stared at me, jaw clenched, tears threatening to spill. I stood, picked up the empty bowls, and set them in the sink. I'll see you Monday, I said, my back turned so they wouldn't see my hands shaking. When the door closed behind them, the house exhaled for the first time that night. The clock ticked on, steady and calm. In 3 days, we would sit in an office and decide whether family could survive honesty. The law office sat above a bakery that smelled of cinnamon and burnt sugar. When I stepped inside, the scent almost made me turn back. Renee Alvarez had been Walter's colleague years ago, a quiet woman with silver hair, eyes sharp enough to slice through excuses. Her office was warm but orderly, stacks of files arranged like disciplined soldiers. "Marion," she said, shaking my hand, "I'm glad you came. Let's keep this civil. Yes?" Civil. I hoped that word would survive the next hour. Ethan arrived first, shoulders hunched, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. Joy followed, pushing a stroller, her little boy fast asleep beneath a blue blanket. Clara came last, without knocking. She tossed her gloves onto the table like an opening move in a chess game she refused to lose. Renee gestured toward the chairs. "Everyone sit. We're here to discuss repayment, not punishment." Clara rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. She's turning us into clients." "Clients pay their bills," Renee said evenly, "so technically, that would be progress." Ethan smothered a laugh but stopped when Clara glared. Joy sat down, smoothing the blanket, her jaw tight. Renee opened a folder. "Mrs. Hale has paid a combined total of $30,400 in financial support to you, 3 over 4 years. She's asked me to prepare an agreement outlining repayment terms, fair, flexible, but binding." The words binding agreement landed like a gavel. Clara's chair scraped against the floor. "I'm not signing anything. This is insane." "Clara," I said softly, "you don't have to agree today. You just have to listen." Renee continued. "The proposal divides the debt evenly, $10,000 each, with a modest interest of 6% to reflect the time value of the money. You'll repay in monthly installments automatically withdrawn from your paychecks. No one's being sued. This is a family arrangement, made legal so it won't fall apart with emotions." Ethan leaned forward. "If I sign, I can handle about $300 a month. I don't make a lot, but I'll manage." Renee nodded. "That's workable. The schedule can adjust for each person's income." Joy's voice was barely above a whisper. "I can pay less at first, maybe $200, but I want to do this right." "You will," I said, meaning every word. Clara stood, pacing. "You're all acting like I'm the villain. You think I wanted this? You think I asked to be indebted to my own mother?" "No," I said. "You didn't ask. You just expected." Her face flushed. "You're unbelievable." Renee's tone softened. "Clara, you can be angry, but the anger doesn't erase the debt. What it can do is remind you that you're capable of taking responsibility. That's power, not punishment." The room went silent. Outside, snow tapped against the windows like fingers waiting for an answer. Clara stopped pacing. Her shoulders trembled, but when she spoke again, her voice had changed, lower, thinner. "I don't even know how to start paying that back." "Start by signing," I said. "We'll figure out the rest." Renee slid the papers across the table. Ethan took a pen first, signed, and pushed the document forward. Joy followed, holding the pen carefully, as if afraid to hurt it. Clara stared at the line with her name printed beneath it. Then she picked up the pen. "You win, Mom," she muttered. "This isn't about winning," I said. It's about not losing each other. The pen scratched across paper. The sound felt louder than it should have. When the last signature dried, Renee gathered the pages and said, "Congratulations, you've just built the foundation for respect." No one spoke as we left. The snow had stopped, leaving the street clean and bright. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking behind my children. I was walking beside them. I folded the letter slowly, tracing the edge of Walter's signature with my thumb. His handwriting was steady even at the end, each line pressed hard enough to leave an imprint on the paper beneath. For years, I'd imagined his voice fading from memory, but reading those words was like hearing him whisper across time, calm, practical, a little teasing. He always had a way of turning hard truth into comfort. I sat there for a long while, staring at the savings bonds bundled neatly under the letter. $15,000, enough to make me safe. Not rich, just safe. The words settled in my chest like a blanket pulled over my shoulders. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's emergency fund. I was my own. When I left the vault room, the young teller smiled politely and asked if everything was all right. I nodded, slipping the envelope into my purse. Outside, the air was crisp and bright, the kind of winter light that made the snow sparkle like broken glass. I walked past the coffee shop where Walter used to meet his friends on Saturdays and ordered his usual, black, no sugar. The first sip burned a little, and that felt fitting. At home. I laid the letter on the kitchen table beside the green notebook. The two looked strangely similar, one filled with what I had given away, the other reminding me of what I was allowed to keep. I ran my hand over both and realized I didn't need to choose between love and self-respect. They could live in the same house, finally. That night, I slept without the old ache in my stomach. No worries about balances, no silent resentment when the phone buzzed with another, "Hey Mom, quick favor," message. I woke the next morning with the light spilling across my bed like forgiveness. I decided not to tell the kids about Walter's letter right away. They were still processing the meeting, the contracts, the weight of what they'd signed. This letter wasn't a weapon or proof. It was a reminder. And I needed to live with it for a while before sharing it. 2 weeks later, the first repayments began to arrive, small deposits but steady. Ethan's came with a short text, "Thanks, Mom, for not giving up." Joy's came with a picture of Liam smiling under a new winter hat. Clara's payment arrived without a note, just an even round number. I took that as progress. I pinned Walter's letter to the corkboard above my desk. Every time I looked at it, I thought about what he'd written. Don't let guilt make you their safety net. I had spent years confusing guilt for generosity, fear for love. He had seen it coming, even when I didn't. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm listening now." And maybe, somewhere, he heard me. Winter settled deep over Wisconsin, the kind that turned car doors into ice sculptures and made every breath visible. I spent most mornings walking to the lake, my boots crunching over frozen gravel, my breath mixing with the smoke from chimneys. The world felt quiet, newly organized, like a bookshelf finally sorted after years of clutter. The first months after the agreement were awkward. The kids called less, texted more carefully. Each message seemed to circle around the topic of money like a bird unsure where to land. Then, slowly, something shifted. Ethan sent his first payment right on time. He attached a note, $300, just like we said. It's weirdly satisfying. A week later, he invited me to watch the youth baseball team he was helping coach. Standing by the chain-link fence, I watched him kneel beside a boy who'd just struck out, resting a hand on his shoulder and saying, "You did your best. Now fix your swing and try again." His tone was patient, steady. I realized he'd borrowed it from me, and that I'd finally loaned him something worth keeping. Joy's payments were smaller, but regular. Once a month, she sent an extra $20 or $30 when she could, always with a photo of Liam, eating ice cream, learning to write his name, sleeping with his toy truck. She'd started keeping a budget binder, neat columns of handwriting. "I learned it from you," she said over the phone one evening. "Turns out spreadsheets are cheaper than guilt." I laughed so hard I cried a little. Clara was the slowest to come around. Her payments arrived late at first, sometimes incomplete, no messages. Just numbers I didn't push. Then, one February evening, she called. Her voice was small. "My card got declined at the grocery store. I was about to call you, but then I remembered what you did last Thanksgiving." I held my breath. She continued. "I transferred money from my savings. I fixed it myself." For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then I whispered, "I'm proud of you." She exhaled a shaky laugh. "Don't make a big deal out of it, Mom." "But thank you for cutting me off. I hated you for it then. I get it now." After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the snow drifting outside. The house felt alive again, filled with something better than noise, peace. By spring, the kids stopped talking about money altogether. We talked about movies, recipes, weather. We laughed again. Each month, the transfers came in quietly, like clockwork. It wasn't about repayment anymore. It was rhythm, proof of balance restored. One afternoon, I got a small bouquet in the mail, no return address, just a card that read, "Thank you for not bailing us out of adulthood." I smiled. I didn't need to know who sent it. They all had reason to. The world outside thawed slowly, and so did we. A year later, the same house smelled of roasted butter again, the same oak table, the same ticking clock above the stove. But the air felt different, lighter, as if the walls had been opened to let the past breathe out. Clara arrived first this time. Carrying a bottle of red wine and a pie she said she'd baked herself. Ethan came in with flowers from the grocery store, still cold from the trunk. Joy followed with Liam tugging her coat, holding a paper turkey he'd made in preschool. They looked nervous, maybe even shy, like guests entering a new home that happened to be the old one. "Smells good, Mom," Ethan said, hanging his jacket. "Same recipe," I told him, smiling. "Just cooked with different boundaries." We laughed, a small sound, but a real one. Dinner was simple. Roast turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, a pecan pie that filled the house with sugar and butter. The kids helped set the table without being asked. They moved around each other gently, careful not to bump into ghosts. When we sat down, Clara raised her glass first. "To Mom," she said, voice steady, "for teaching us that love doesn't mean never saying no." I felt the warmth spread through my chest, not the burning kind of pride, but the quiet relief of finally being understood. As we ate, conversation flowed easily. Movies, work, Liam's obsession with dinosaurs. No one mentioned money. There were no awkward pauses, no glances toward wallets or checks, just the rhythm of forks and laughter. After dessert, I reached into the drawer and took out Walter's letter. I hadn't planned to, but it felt right. "Your father wrote this before he passed," I said, unfolding the paper. "He wanted me to remember something." They listened in silence while I read. When I came to the line, "Don't let guilt make you their safety net. Love them enough to say no." My voice caught, but I finished. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Joy reached for my hand. Ethan nodded. Clara wiped her eyes and whispered, "He was right." I smiled. He usually was. When it was time to clear the table, Clara pulled out her phone. "I got the bill for dinner," she said, tapping the app. "We'll split it 4 ways." They all laughed. And so did I. Outside, snow began to fall again, slow and clean. I stood at the window watching it drift over the yard, my reflection faint against the glass. Last year, I'd stood in this same spot feeling hollow. This year, I felt whole. I hadn't just closed their credit cards. I'd opened something better. Respect. And that, I realized, was the kind of inheritance worth leaving behind. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.